Good afternoon, everybody. As most of you know, my name is Mary Wilson. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations and Business Advocacy for the Northern Kentucky Chamber. And on behalf of the entire Chamber staff, our members, and our Board of Directors, welcome to today's Government Forum. We're glad you can join us and for what I'm sure to be an engaging and informative program today. Today we are privileged to host Congressman Andy Barr, who represents Kentucky's 6th Congressional District. It is our honor to have him here today with us and look forward to hearing his insights on important matters for our business community. As we begin our program, as usual, to be courteous to those around you and to our speakers, please silence your cell phone, but as always, feel free to snap a few photos, and if you want to share something on social media after today's program, please feel free to do that. I just kindly ask, as long as it's a nice remark, to tag the Northern Kentucky Chamber in your post. At this time, I just want to share a little bit about the privileges and the services that your Northern Kentucky Chamber shares with you as our members. And so if you're considering a membership today, here's just a point to consider. We have many great ways to increase your visibility and connections for your business growth. And if you are looking to boost your visibility, we offer a variety of cost-effective marketing opportunities designed to help you stand out and connect with your target audience. As a member, you can be featured on the Northern Kentucky Spotlight podcast, sponsor events like today, advertise in the Northern Kentucky Business Journal, or be recognized as a member of the day on all of our social media channels. Many of these options are low cost or even free. So please take advantage of them, and we make these things accessible for businesses, all businesses of all sizes. To explore the full range of promotional opportunities, please get in touch with our great Vice President of Membership, many of you know her, Lynn Ablin, or visit our website and see how we can help you elevate your presence and grow your business and audience. The Chamber is proud to offer these opportunities to help our members grow, and we love seeing the impact they make for our member businesses across Northern Kentucky, and I could cite several examples just looking around the room today. Speaking of impact, today's event would not be possible without the support of our very generous sponsors. Their partnership allows us to bring you programs like this and continue our work to strengthen our business community here in the region and across the state. I'm taking a moment to recognize them now, and I just kindly ask that you hold your applause until I have recognized all of them. At that time, we can show our appreciations together. Our title sponsors today are Duke Energy and Fidelity Investments. You will be hearing more from these two title sponsors later in the program. Kevin Canifax of Fidelity Investments will be introducing our special guest, and after the remarks, Patrick Keel of Duke Energy will lead a question and answer session. Our networking sponsors are Alta Fiber, Heritage Bank, and Taft Law. Our event sponsors are Amazon, Delta Airlines, and St. Elizabeth Healthcare. And finally, our media partner is Link NKY. So please patronize these businesses. Many of you do already, because you need to, and others amongst our membership. These are the companies in our business community who have stepped up to support the Chamber's advocacy efforts. Would representatives of all of these great sponsors please stand so we can recognize you today? Please join me in thanking them. Thank you very, very much. I also want to recognize some other special people that are in the audience today. If you are a Northern Kentucky young professional, a chamber board member, or an elected official, and I know we have several, Representative Mosier, I see here Representative Kleins, Representative Lehman right here in the front. We have a couple of mayors in the room, county commissioners, so plenty of people in the room. Please see them if you haven't. So all of those folks, if you're a Northern Kentucky YP, a chamber board member, or an elected official for the Northern Kentucky region, would you please stand now to be recognized? Thank you for your service to our region and our Commonwealth. Now I'd like to turn our program over to our friend representing one of our title sponsors, Fidelity Investments, Kevin Canifax. Kevin serves as the Vice President of Public Affairs, Corporate Affairs, and Innovation Strategy at Fidelity Investments. Kevin, he will be introducing our featured guest today. Please join me in welcoming Kevin to the podium.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon, everyone. I have the privilege of introducing our esteemed special guest, Congressman Andy Barr. Congressman Barr has represented Kentucky's 6th District since 2013. He serves as chairman of the House Financial Services Subcommittee on Financial Institutions and Monetary Policy, which oversees key regulators like the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and leading oversight on monetary policy and inflation, all issues near and dear to the heart of Fidelity Investments. He is also in his second term on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, serving on the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee, and sits on the strategic competition with the Chinese Communist Party. His work in these roles builds his experience with the U.S. Treasury, international portfolio, sanctions enforcement, and foreign investment review. Throughout his time in Congress, he has been a strong advocate for Kentucky families, farmers, and small businesses, including helping design the Paycheck Protection Program during the COVID-19 pandemic. A Lexington native, he is a graduate of the University of Virginia and the University of Kentucky College of Law. Most recently, Congressman Barr officially launched his campaign to succeed retiring Senator Mitch McConnell. Please join me in giving a warm Northern Kentucky Chamber welcome to Congressman Andy Barr.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the kind introduction, and I appreciate the Northern Kentucky Chamber for the invitation and the opportunity to say hello to all of our friends up here in Northern Kentucky. I believe an economic juggernaut for the Commonwealth. So Brent and Tammy, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be with all of you all, and love to meet all of you all, learn more about your businesses. I know a lot of you all, especially those of you in financial services, because we've had an occasion to interact over the years, owing to my service on the Financial Services Committee, and how fortunate and blessed we are in Northern Kentucky to have such an amazing presence from Fidelity. This is a terrific American company that builds wealth and provides retirement security and wealth accumulation and advice for so many Americans, and to have so many professionals at Fidelity who live here in the Commonwealth with us in Northern Kentucky, huge contributor and driver of economic growth. So Kevin, thanks for everything that you all do. Judge Pendry, I saw you earlier, and Commissioner Lampy, and there's a lot of officials here. The Mayor of Florence I got a chance to meet earlier. Thanks to all of you all for everything you do to promote our communities up here in Northern Kentucky. Let me just start local. I'll go to national, and then I'll end with a little bit of foreign policy or national security. So locally, it's been a privilege of a lifetime to get a chance over these last 13 years to serve in the Congress representing Central Kentucky. Our economies are tied together, of course. When you talk to Toyota in Georgetown, for example, which of course has had a Northern Kentucky presence historically, or if you talk to any of the businesses in Central Kentucky, whether it's the bourbon industry, the horse industry, manufacturing, agriculture, you know what they say is important to them? Brent Spence. Brent Spence is important because the corridor of commerce goes right through Lexington I-75, and so your economy affects the economy of Central Kentucky. And CVG, I fly out of CVG all the time, you know, and it's really fun and exciting to get a chance to run for office statewide now and kind of zoom out. I've been focused on Central Kentucky and Central Kentucky's economy for this decade or so, and now I get to come up here and go to Louisville and go to West Kentucky and East Kentucky and kind of see the full picture. And it would be a privilege of a lifetime, again, to get a chance to represent all of Kentucky in the Senate and Northern Kentucky. But one thing that occurs to me as I look out, zoom out, and see the Northern Kentucky economy is the logistics juggernaut that is CVG. And when you pair that just down the road with Worldport and UPS at SDF, we have so much potential, I think untapped potential in Northern Kentucky and Louisville to build on that expertise that we have in logistics. We are, after all, a day's drive to 2/3 of the population of the United States, certainly a lot quicker from CVG and SDF. So the logistics expertise that we have is something that we can build on, and certainly I tip of the hat to Northern Kentucky to have the vision with DHL and Amazon. We can really build on that, obviously, with our economy here. We're more than just a suburb of Cincinnati. We are an economic powerhouse in our own right, and I want to work with Northern Kentucky to continue to promote that. Let me step back and tell you a little bit about kind of an update from Washington, the agenda that we're working on. I'll start with my job exercising oversight over the Federal Reserve. So we've got realtors, home builders in the room, people, bankers who care about interest rate policy. We've seen, I think, a series of errors, of missteps by the Federal Reserve. Back in 2021 and 2022, when we were bringing data back, members of Congress from all over the country, bringing data back, anecdotal, but also hard data back from our chambers of commerce to the Fed, telling them that these price increases are sticky. They're not, as the Fed was saying, not as Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary at the time, or the President at the time, saying that this was transitory inflation. And they really brushed us aside. And that was a huge error because the tightening project that the Fed ultimately got to was late. And so you had the fiscal policy error of excessive spending on top of all of that COVID spending that increased and created excess demand. You had supply chain constraints coming out of COVID, but also some bad fiscal policies constraining the supply of labor, constraining the supply of energy in particular, and so there was a supply-demand mismatch. So fiscal policy errors, but then the Fed compounded it, right, because they were slow in tightening. And so inflation got away from the Fed. Well, finally, when we finally got inflation moving in the right direction, then the Fed cut, and then they cut in a way that was seen as political because it was a full 50 basis points September right before the election, and then they stopped. Right after the election, they did another 50, but then they stopped. And we've seen basic price stability. Now, we're a little elevated on prices, and I know people have questions about tariffs and the impact on tariffs. Chris Waller, who is one of the Fed governors who may be in the running, by the way, for chairman. I think it'll probably be Kevin Warsh, but Waller thinks, and he's got a pretty well-informed view, that the tariffs, while creating some turbulence in the short term, really would result probably in just a one-time price increase and not impact overall inflation expectations. We'll see about that. But at the end of the day, the Fed has continued to kind of hold pat and not cut. I think we're due for a 25 basis point cut in September. A consensus, I think, is developing, and the chairman, I think, doesn't want to be in the minority, and so I think we're heading towards a modest run towards easing on monetary policy towards the back half of the year. I would also note that over the longer term, I see some major disinflationary trends that would give a green light to the Fed to cut. And that especially is AI. Artificial intelligence is going to massively improve productivity. And when you increase productivity and you decrease the cost of doing business, in addition to the tax cuts, in addition to deregulation generally in Washington, D.C., that's going to lower the cost of business. And I think that has a disinflationary impact over the long run. And so to the extent tariffs might have some impact on prices in the upward direction, you've got these counter effects in AI, deregulation, and tax cuts that will lower the cost of doing business. So I do think the Fed is in a position where they can start cutting rates pretty soon. The one big beautiful bill. This was a big victory for American business, a big victory for American competitiveness. Not to mention no tax on tips, pretty good for those waitresses and Uber drivers and other workers that need a little bit of a break. But I think the provision that was part of the president's promises made, promises kept piece of the bill that I think is really quite growth-oriented is the no tax on overtime. I hear from businesses all over central Kentucky in my district, and I'm sure the case is, it's a similar story here, that there's always a labor shortage question. When there's a labor shortage, if you can get more workers to be more productive and overtime, that's good. So incentives on overtime and rewarding overtime work and rewarding productivity, I think, is very stimulative and I think very good for the economy. Bonus depreciation, R&D, expensing, making the small business 199A deduction permanent. I bet there's a lot of pass-throughs represented out here in this audience. That is jet fuel for the economy. And not only did we make that permanent, like the corporate tax cuts that were made permanent back in 2017, 2018, but now we've made the small business pass-through deduction permanent, and we've enhanced it. It's now gone from 20 to 23%. So when you add all of these tax provisions together, really, really stimulative. And the one provision that is the most, I would argue, underreported provision of the One Big Beautiful Bill is the Made in America manufacturing tax cut. So this is, I think, in addition to the president's trade policies, what really animated the decision from Apple to invest $2.5 billion in the Commonwealth, in my district, in central Kentucky, in Mercer County. If you missed it, what is this? So this device that might be in your pocket, I don't know, it has what's called Gorilla Glass on it. That Gorilla Glass is made in several different places globally right now. One of the places it's made is in Harrodsburg, Kentucky, at the Corning plant there. There's about 400 jobs right now there. Gorilla Glass, this hard glass, is also manufactured for Apple iPhones and Apple Watches in Taiwan, the Republic of Korea, and in China. The announcement in the Oval Office last week was that all of this is now going to be made in Harrodsburg. That is a big deal, and I'll talk about the threat from China and why it's important to untangle our supply chains. But Apple iPhones are way too wrapped up in Chinese supply chains. And so this is not only good for the economy of Kentucky, but it's good for national security. I'll explain that in a minute. But I credited the president's policies in large measure because it's not just about the trade policies that encourage domestic manufacturing to avoid import tariffs. It's also this Made in the USA manufacturing provision, which says that, and this is now law, if you put shovels in the ground on a new manufacturing facility in 2025 and put that asset into service before 2032, I think is the provision, that you get 100% expensing on that. So think of a global multinational corporation like Apple. They've got a huge tax liability. They make a $2.5 billion investment and build a new manufacturing facility in conjunction with Corning. It's actually a Corning facility, but Apple's going to make their Gorilla Glass there. Those jobs in that manufacturing facility, they can write off the cost in 1 year, as opposed to typically a real property asset you depreciate over 39 years. Again, this is massive jet fuel for the economy, and it's going to result in a lot of onshoring of American manufacturing jobs, disentangling our overdependence on supply chains overseas. So this is, I think, really sound policy. So tax cuts, business tax cuts, growth-oriented tax cuts that produce domestic manufacturing jobs and productivity, on top of deregulation. A couple of different types of deregulation are happening in Washington right now. You've heard of the energy dominance strategy. I'm a real believer in this. Again, very disinflationary. Energy goes into everything. The more we produce, it's a supply and demand issue. The more energy we supply in this country, the lower the cost of doing business and the lower costs for Americans generally. Supply, supply, supply. That's the best way we can fight inflation and get to that price stability. And that's what we're seeing with this administration. Doug Burgum is the Interior Secretary, but he also serves as the czar, the energy czar, the czar of the National Council for Energy Dominance. And you have Chris Wright, who is an energy entrepreneur, who is an all-of-the-above guy, including coal, natural gas, oil. He wants fossil energy back online. Lee Zeldin at the EPA, he's making a lot of moves to unleash American energy dominance strategy as well. And I think this is also very, very positive for the economy. And then in financial services, I'll touch on two things. First, the crypto agenda and the innovation agenda. I was talking to Kevin about this earlier. Fidelity is a rock-solid company. They have a pretty traditional and conservative investment strategy, but their discerning investors and their retail investors who they serve, they have an appetite for crypto. They're interested, and not just Bitcoin, but all kinds of potential alternative investing strategies into cryptocurrencies and digital assets. And what we've seen in the absence of a regulatory framework for digital assets is innovation pushed offshore. This is a very bad thing. Not only did we not have a regulatory framework that protected investors, we also saw a Securities and Exchange Commission during the Biden years being very, very hostile to crypto entrepreneurs. And the result was using plain vanilla fraud in the case of FTX as a scapegoat to attack the entire industry, many of whom are very good players and are promoting a future of frictionless and low-cost trading in securities and innovation on the blockchain, utility tokens, all kinds of interesting, fascinating innovations that are happening in our economy. This is what we call Web 3. So Web 1 was the internet, where you're consuming information from websites. Web 2.0 was really social media, where you could project information out into the world. And Web 3.0 is really the movement of finance onto the blockchain, the movement of the internet to money. And it's basically digital money and digital transactions. That's Web 3. The United States of America needs to be the world's crypto leader. We need to be the leader and the destination for capital investment into this innovation. So what we did this term of Congress, and the president signed it into law, a big bipartisan victory for our country, was what we call the Genius Act. The Genius Act created for the first time a regulatory framework for dollar-backed payment stablecoins. What does that mean? That means that unlike Bitcoin, which is really just a commodity, a digital commodity that has some relative volatility in its store of value, a stablecoin is a more, as the name would suggest, stable store of value. So think of it as a digital money market account. You have physical currency or maybe treasury securities, high liquid assets, high quality liquid assets in an account that backs up dollar for dollar the tokenized asset. And you see these companies like Circle, for example, producing the US dollar coin that you can download on your Coinbase or Kraken crypto exchange app. And these have, I think, future utility of immense form. So I'll give you an example. Why would you choose to use a dollar-backed stablecoin? Well, you could use it for a lot of different things. To decrease friction on the way you make payments, instantaneous settlement of those payments. So think of a purchaser of a good at a merchant. Instead of going through interchange, you simply use your wallet to transmit money to the merchant. The token moves almost instantaneously to the merchant on basically a frictionless basis on the blockchain. And so you're taking out a lot of the middleman and a lot of the friction in that transaction. Eventually, we anticipate that dollar-denominated stablecoins will be used in the trading of securities and the settlement of those trades, and that will also decrease substantial amount of friction and increase the speed of transactions. Now, that increases risk for fraud. Banks have concerns about that. One thing that we embedded in the Genius Act to make sure that we were not unintentionally disintermediating the banks in a way that would erode their deposit base was we prohibited in the bill, for the community bankers in the room, we prohibited in the bill interest-bearing stablecoins that would truly compete with the deposit base. Protecting community banks and regional banks' deposit base is very, very important because that is the basis for conventional lending into the real economy. So we feel like we threaded the needle on moving forward into this age of innovation, but also protecting the banking sector as well. And then the next step of this, and by the way, one other final virtue of the Genius Act that's probably the most important advantage of what we did was by creating this regulatory framework, we cemented in the global economy the dollar's dominance. Digital assets and stable coins are coming, and they're already here, whether we like it or not, whether the banking sector likes it or not. But the United States needs to be the leader because we want the dollar to be backing all of these stable coins in the global economy. China has a central bank digital currency, the digital yuan. Other countries are playing around with the CBDC. The European Central Bank is playing around with a central bank digital currency. We don't agree with a central bank digital currency, but we do agree in private stablecoins backed by the US dollar. Get those dollar-denominated stablecoins into the global economy. Everybody wants the dollar. That will solidify the dollar as the world's reserve currency in this new digital age of money. And that's also important because it increases demand for Treasury securities. If you haven't noticed, we have a $37 trillion national debt. This new ecosystem of dollar-backed stablecoins that have to be backed by high-quality liquid assets, including U.S. Treasuries, will massively increase demand for Treasury securities in the global economy. That is a good thing for the American economy. So that's the stablecoin bill. And then the next phase this fall is we're going to try to pass the Clarity Act. We have 78 Democrats out of the House on this bill. It's into the Senate. It's got a fighting chance. We need 60 votes in the Senate. What this bill would do is create a market structure for digital assets. I talked about payments, the application of payments in stablecoins. This is putting digital assets in the right regulatory bucket. So if it's used to raise capital for an enterprise, if it's an investment contract, it should be regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission as a security. If it is Bitcoin, if it is a commodity, if it is something that is like a utility token, if it's used not necessarily as a payment or as a security, but as some kind of utility, that would be regulated by the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC. This will provide the regulatory clarity that we think will allow the innovation in crypto to flourish right where it belongs in the United States of America. The third and fourth piece of this agenda is banning a central bank digital currency. We should not try to compete with China by becoming more like China. We don't want the Federal Reserve to tokenize the US dollar in the form of a central bank digital currency. That's what Elizabeth Warren wants. That's what Beijing does to surveil Americans' financial transactions. We want to protect the privacy of Americans, and that's why we support private dollar-backed stablecoins as an alternative to that. And the final piece of this is debanking. You may have seen that the president issued an executive order to stop discrimination in banking against politically unpopular industries like crypto. We saw this significantly during the prior administration where crypto entrepreneurs could not get a bank account. We've seen it in fossil energy in Kentucky where surface mining operators were denied banking services or were told that they no longer had a banking relationship because they were politically unpopular, or a firearms dealer, or maybe it's a pawn shop or a small dollar credit provider. We think that that kind of discrimination is wrong against law-abiding businesses. And so Senator Tim Scott and I have introduced a bill to codify the president's executive order, allow banks to participate in the new crypto economy, custody digital assets, issue their own stablecoin if they want as well, but prevent this pernicious practice of bank regulators punishing banks and discouraging them from banking certain politically unfashionable businesses. Real quick on financial services deregulation, we have energy deregulation, the innovation agenda, and then we're also pushing an agenda to make community banks great again. And what we mean by that is we're helping innovation here, but we're not leaving out the banks. We're not. We want to unleash our banking sector to do what they do best, which is provide the seed capital for new business formation and entrepreneurship, to be providers of that capital and providers of the dream of American home ownership. As rates come down, we also want a very vibrant, diverse banking system to provide the loans into the real economy. So we are going to be pushing an agenda this fall of regulatory tailoring so that community banks and mid-sized banks don't face the same level of supervisory scrutiny as larger, more sophisticated and complex GSIB banks. We also have succeeded in stopping this so-called junk fee agenda that actually would hurt consumers. And we've defanged the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. For those of you who don't know, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the most authoritarian, unaccountable agency in the entire federal government. I have always believed that the best consumer protection is competition and choice, not central planning from bureaucrats at the CFPB. So a lot more to come on capital markets and bank deregulation, but the bottom line is we're going to unleash free market capitalism to restore the American dream, and that is a good thing. On trade, I do predict that things will settle out in 2026 as we approach the midterm election, and hopefully the end result of this short-term turbulence is that you get better, more reciprocal, and yes, more free trade deals. We've already seen a few frameworks put into place that lead to more free trade, not less, more free trade and more market access for American exporters. Japan, Indonesia. Indonesia is huge. Indonesia is the fourth most populous country on planet Earth. Opening up Indonesia to American exporters is huge. I know bourbon is a trade-sensitive Kentucky industry, and we're all concerned about retaliatory tariffs, but so far credit Jameson, Greer, and Howard Lutnick, who I've worked with on bourbon for Kentucky, and we have seen no EU retaliation yet. We've got a problem with Canada we're still working on, but the real potential of this trade agenda is opening up India. So India, think about it, most populous nation on planet Earth. We've got a problem with them buying Russian oil right now, but if we can work through that, and we can see that protectionist country start to open up that market, 1.4 billion people. And by the way, people who are used to drinking whiskey, very bad blended Scotch whiskey, I call it the drink of the empire, okay? We want them to drink the drink of freedom, okay? Kentucky bourbon, sweet corn-based bourbon whiskey goes perfectly with the spicy Indian palate. 150% tariffs until this year. We're at 100. They've lowered them to 100. If we can get those tariff and non-tariff trade barriers off of our Kentucky bourbon, we could triple production in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and not meet the demand of India. So there is huge upside to this trade policy if we let it play out and see what happens. There is a concern that we've overproduced and we've got a glut. We will not have a glut of bourbon if we open up India. Finally, let me just end by talking a little bit about national security. My focus in Congress has been the economy and financial services, but on the Financial Services Committee, I have an additional assignment on the National Security Subcommittee. There I have oversight over OFAC, which is the agency in Treasury that implements and enforces sanctions. I'm also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and because of that cross-jurisdiction, the Speaker of the House has put me on this select committee on the strategic competition with China. If you talk to our commander at PACOM, Indo-PACOM, if you talk to our admirals in the Pacific, what they will tell you is they take very, very seriously, and oh, by the way, the Director of National Intelligence, the CIA, they all say the same thing. Take seriously Xi Jinping's threat of making sure that the PLA is ready for a cross-strait invasion of Taiwan in 2027. The objective of the Chinese Communist Party is very, very clear. There is no ambiguity about their objective. There's a lot about Chinese strategy and Sun Tzu that's not unambiguous, but this is unambiguous. They have a They have a 100-year marathon objective of replacing the United States as the world's global superpower by 2049. 2049 because it's 100 years from the Mao Revolution, Communist Revolution 1949. That's when they kicked out the nationalists, the Kuomintang, to Taiwan. There is a real desire on the part of Xi Jinping for what he calls the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, the restoration of the Middle Kingdom, that they have to forcibly reunite China, meaning that Taiwan has to be absorbed by mainland. There are historic grievances, and that's why they want it. But there's a more sinister reason why they want Taiwan, and it's because Taiwan is an island democracy. We've lost Hong Kong. Taiwan is the last remaining vestige of democracy in that part of the world. And Taiwan produces 90% of the world's advanced semiconductors. 90%. So these are the 2 to 3 to 4 nanometer chips that will power the most sophisticated artificial intelligence. Nobody makes this sophisticated chip like NVIDIA and like TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And so they want that because they want to militarize AI. The Chinese military last year produced 1 million drones, 1 million. To put that in context, the U.S. military produced 10,000. Last year at the Changxing Island Shipyard, which is 2,800 acres outside of Shanghai, that one shipyard last year produced more ships than the United States has produced since the end of World War II combined. They are racing ahead of us in hypersonics, in semiconductors and microelectronics, on quantum computing, and in space. Fox Nation has a new release on this. They are developing capabilities to take out all of our GPS within seconds. The race in space is real and dangerous. What the Chinese are doing in the South China Sea, 60 Minutes has chronicled this very well, and I've seen it with my own eyes in a Poseidon naval aircraft with our amazing airmen, is in a place called the Second Thomas Shoal, and in other places like Mischief Reef and Fiery Reef. They've got these submerged islands or reefs in the South China Sea. By the way, the Philippines call it the West Philippine Sea. There's a territorial dispute called the 9-Dash Line. China claims it all for themselves. The Philippines says it's in their exclusive economic zone. But nevertheless, there are these reefs. China is taking over these reefs. They're building artificial islands on top of them and building runways, militarizing them with anti-aircraft satellite communications equipment, and putting military aircraft on those runways. And it's very clearly designed to block a resupply effort by the United States from the Philippines to Taiwan. The northern part of Taiwan, and where these artificial reefs are, is about 440 nautical miles south of Taiwan. And then we have some Marines in Okinawa, just north of Taiwan, and then Guam, Indo-PACOM is trying to build up our Marine presence there. We have enhanced defense cooperation sites, about 9 of them, in the north of the Philippines, and private equity firm Cerberus, that Vice President Quayle is the chairman of that. We're trying to invest in some shipbuilding capacity and get back into Subic Bay in the Philippines. We have to make Taiwan a porcupine so that we don't lose the ability to control the future of artificial intelligence and those semiconductors. We're trying to diversify the supply chain. TSMC is building a multi-billion-dollar facility in Arizona. Intel is trying to do something in Ohio, but it takes a long time to diversify that supply chain. Don't forget about China's stranglehold on rare earth elements. They mine about 70% of all of the world's rare earth elements. They process, or they are in charge of or in control of 92% of all rare earth element refining. Why is that important? Because a lot of this stuff goes into our sensitive weapon systems. China controls 99% of all gallium, which goes into a lot of our national security weapon systems. The B-2 bomber, the Joint Strike Fighter, hundreds of pounds of rare earth elements controlled by China. When Trump put the tariffs on China after Liberation Day, do you remember what China did? China did not retaliate with tariffs. They put export controls on rare earths and we had to back down because we have to have them. So we need to win the race for AI, and we need to win the fight for economic control of all of these things. You remember right after COVID, one of the top Chinese Communist Party officials, when they stopped sending us the personal protective equipment to all of the hospitals over here, what did they say? They said, we're going to throw Americans into a sea of coronavirus. We learned then we are dangerously overdependent on China in all areas of these things. And back to the iPhone, why is Mercer County so important? Because we've done a tabletop exercise, and a Taiwan invasion would be met with a big response on sanctions. We would sanction China as a result of that, maybe intervene militarily, but what would China do in response? They would stop sending Americans this. We've got to get all of the components of this and semiconductors and rare earth elements and personal protective equipment and medical equipment and precursors to medicines out of China. And so that's why it's so important that we do these trade deals with partners and allies outside of China. So final thing is Chinese access to our capital markets. We have been unwittingly financing the civil military fusion in China. There are about 250 Chinese companies that have connections to state-owned enterprises that are listed on U.S. exchanges. We just saw J.P. Morgan and Bank of America, I believe, underwrite an IPO of a company with ties to the People's Liberation Army in Hong Kong. Fidelity deserves clarity on what is permissible and what is not, and so Senator Cornyn and I are working on a framework that wouldn't decouple from China altogether. It wouldn't take all investment opportunities away from American investors into China if it involved non-national security sensitive matters. But on military-grade technologies, we want to prevent Americans' 401ks or IRAs from financing the rise of the Chinese military or surveillance state. And it comes right back to the dollar's dominance. China, through BRICS and other measures and their digital yuan, they want to undermine our dollar. And they're dumping our treasuries right now. So this is an economic warfare in many respects. It's not just about trade. It's not just about theft of intellectual property and transfer of technology and academic espionage at our universities. It's broader than that, and we need to be prepared. So thanks for letting me share all of that. I think Kentucky, and I'll end with this, long talk, but I'll end with this. Kentucky is uniquely positioned to help the United States advance our national security in this competition with China. What do I mean by that? Well, we have two advantages in addition to our logistics and our central location. We have manufacturing expertise. We are very good at making the F-150. We are very good at the Camry. We are very good at the Corvette. We know how to manufacture stuff, and we're good at it. We also have a lot of indigenous energy. I was with the largest landowner in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, in Hazard, Kentucky, the other day, and their geologist told me that in their mineral holdings, they are literally sitting on an ocean of coal in eastern Kentucky. We have three major interstate natural gas pipelines coming right through Kentucky. In the west, you may have heard this announcement of General Matter coming to start the uranium enrichment. We have a future of nuclear power in western Kentucky. We have more navigable waterways in Kentucky than any other state other than Alaska. We have untapped hydropower at our fingertips. Kentucky is uniquely positioned to lead the country in hosting artificial intelligence data centers with all of the power that is required to do that. We can help us win the race for AI with data centers in all of these sources of energy that we have, and we can build them because we have manufacturing expertise. So that's my vision. If the people of Kentucky want me to go to the Senate, I want to put our people back to work in AI, the technologies of the future, and in energy, again, to not only make Kentucky an economically prosperous commonwealth, but also to help us in this critical competition with the People's Republic of China. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. Can you all hear me? Thank you so much. We are going to quickly transition to a couple, one or two questions, just to kind of get the audience blood flowing and mind thinking about for some audience Q&A. And to do that, again, I earlier mentioned our title sponsor, Duke Energy. We have a representative, Patrick Keel, who will lead that very brief, before we turn it over to the audience, Q&A period at that time. So, Patrick, here you go.
Thank you, Tammy. All right. And thank you for those remarks, Congressman. You actually covered a lot of what I was going to ask about, so we can jump into audience questions sooner. You did highlight Apple and the investment in Harrodsburg. What do you think was the main driver behind that announcement, specific to Kentucky, and do you think there will be similar investments that we'll see moving forward, bringing that manufacturing back here?
The second question first, yes, I anticipate this is going to be the first of many such announcements. Two factors. One, tariff evasion. Apple doesn't want to pay the tariffs. And secondly, and nobody knows how long the tariffs will be. Maybe they'll be persistent, maybe not. But I think it's got a lot of multinational companies thinking about onshoring, bringing more manufacturing jobs here in the United States to avoid an uncertain tariff future. The second is the Made in America manufacturing provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Great. And I'll wrap with this question. So much of the strong economy starts with having affordable energy prices, as you alluded to, transporting goods, providing services, heat and cooling homes, empowering communities. What's been done and what's coming to improve our energy supply that all of the entrepreneurs and businesses in this room rely on?
Well, there's a lot of work that's being done at the Department of Energy, Department of Interior, opening up federal lands onshore, offshore, in an environmentally sensitive way, but also more leases. I think just this general energy dominant strategy of more energy production, and this includes Kentucky. So the president issued some executive orders on coal, and I believe that when you consider that China is building a new coal-fired power plant every single week they're putting online a new coal-fired power plant, by the way, with inferior electricity generation technology, high emissions, no environmental standards. What we ought to be doing in the United States is not disinvesting from coal. We should be investing more in the best technology, emissions control technology, circulating fluidized bed, scrubbers, and bringing coal-fired power units back online to deal with the new energy demands of our economy, but also for the climate. We need more, not less, capital investment in the best technology so that the United States can export that technology to lesser developed countries, maybe even China, so that the countries that will continue to burn coal will do so in a better, more environmentally friendly way. We can't be left behind. We have too many power needs, and so I think we can bring that online. Now, the challenge of bringing on new coal-fired power units is that is a high hurdle. So what Doug Burgum did in the One Big Beautiful Bill with us, and it's our jurisdiction, so he and I had a conversation about including it in the bill. We put $1 billion in that bill for a fund, an energy dominance fund, to help provide loan guarantees for this exact type of thing. And I asked him, could this be eligible for, bringing back a coal-fired power unit at Big Sandy or up at Spurlock in Maysville? Could we do what we were envisioning in Clark County and Winchester, East Kentucky Power, bring on new coal, high state-of-the-art emissions control coal-fired power? And the answer was yes, and you can use that government guarantee to attract private capital that otherwise wouldn't take the risk. So you take the political risk, the regulatory risk kind of off the table. You get that patient private capital backstopped by this $1 billion fund. So that's the plan.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you again. Let's give him a round of applause before I start taking audience questions. We are limited on time, so I just kindly ask, raise your hand, introduce yourself, and make your question quick so we get more questions in for our congressman here. Who would like to ask a question? All right, Kevin.
Congressman, again, thank you for being here. I was very impressed, I assume most of the people in the audience were as well, with the breadth and depth of knowledge relative to AI. So I want to ask you this question. Jeffrey Hinton, who's considered the godfather of AI, has come out recently and said that there's a 10 to 20% chance that AI will destroy humanity if we don't begin to regulate it to a greater degree. And he even mentioned something about embedding maternal instincts within AI. Just your general thought about government's role, because it's a private sector issue. The tech companies really have to really start focusing on this. But what do you see as a relationship between government and the private sector in addressing the AI opportunity?
Well, when you grow up in the era of the 1980s, you're not only growing up with Ronald Reagan, you're growing up with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator. And so, we don't want that with AI, right? And these hallucinations are concerning, when, AI turns evil. That's kind of scary. What's mind-blowing is, and I was in Silicon Valley recently talking to a guy actually who grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and who's now a big VC guy. His company's called, his name is Avichal Garg, and listen to his podcast. He's crazy brilliant. But he runs this VC firm called Electric Capital. He's investing in a lot of crypto, but a lot of AI too. And, he thinks that we have blown through what everybody expected the limits of AI to be, and now we're kind of at the precipice of not perfect AI that's superior intelligence to humans, but we're on the cusp of what he calls ASI, artificial superintelligence, where the aggregate of all AI comes together, and there starts to be judgments made based on all of the aggregated data, and some of those judgments, if they're bad judgments, it could be supreme intelligence that could get away from us. So, yes, like any innovation, there has to be care, there has to be deliberation, there has to be smart regulation of it. But that is more of the caveat, in my opinion. I don't think we're at a place where you're reaching that tipping point of danger. What I think, because China is not, there's no governors in China on this stuff. They don't have governors. They want to win this race. I think, like with anything else, whether it's the advent of the light bulb or the advent of the motor vehicle or the going to space, there's danger in all of that. Harnessing electricity for light bulbs was dangerous, but Thomas Edison did it, and we're better off because of it. Henry Ford invented the car, and people died in car wrecks, but it was better. Humanity was better off. And, there was tragedy on the Challenger space shuttle, but going to the moon and, winning the race to space was worth it for humanity. Same thing with AI. AI has so much potential to do good in terms of efficiencies, in terms of productivity, reducing the time that humans have to spend on menial tasks. I'll give you a great example in your sector. I met a 24-year-old recently, get this, billionaire. He has become a billionaire in the last couple of years because he has started a company called Vise AI. If I'm not mistaken, Fidelity is a customer of Vise AI. His algorithms, by the way, he's self-taught. He watched advanced mathematics videos on YouTube. His algorithms that he has patented, is selling to BlackRock and Fidelity and other registered investment advisors all over the country. And he's developing incredible strategies for tax efficiency and reducing time on asset allocation and portfolios and diversification. It's crazy. And he's kind of liberating the investment advisor to play golf with the client. This is what he says. Play golf with the client and develop the relationship. And then he has the AI machine that he's developed, deliver better, more tax-efficient returns for the client. And so, stuff like that is happening in medicine. AI has the potential to cure cancer. AI has the potential to revolutionize education and decrease the time commitment of students and decrease student loans. The real frontier is where AI and blockchain come together and accelerate efficiency in finance. So I think, yes, there's danger. Yes, there needs to be sensible regulation, but let's not jump to regulating AI before we really realize the potential of the innovation.
Congressman, thank you again. That's all the time we have before I do my closing remarks, so please don't get up. Please join me in thanking Congressman Andy Barr for being here today. Good luck on your campaign.